Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Talent Finders podcast. I would like to welcome Christopher Jones, serial entrepreneur who possesses a rare blend of technology and creative vision. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Chris, I love the introduction, which clearly describes you being a rare blend of business, technology, and having a creative vision. Please, can you share a little more about this and where your entrepreneurial journey began?
Okay, sure. My entrepreneurial career began when I was in college. I was a working student. At the time, I was, in fact, maybe you could say it started a little earlier, even in high school. Me and my buddies were always making films and started a little film company and such. But it really began in earnest when I was in college and I was working for a Times Mirror company who was focused on online training, or better said, computer-based training. They were really the pioneers in authoring, like object-oriented authoring and instructional technologies and such. So at one point, I was spearheading a project with the White House Commission on Aviation Safety, and I was trying to marry computer-based training with ground-based vehicle simulators and seeing where they intersect. You know, somebody would get out of a flight simulator or a vehicle simulator, and then the computer-based training would read what they did and provide some customized, instruction based on how they performed. And so that was, when I was starting to innovate and create these little, really innovative solutions at the time, I got infected with an entrepreneurial bug. And so, in fact, as I was leaving that client and I had brought the owner and the founder of the company, my company I worked for, I was driving back to the office. I said, Steve, I feel like I need to go do my own thing. And he said, if you don't do it, you'll forever regret it. And just really kind of gave me that boost to go out and do stuff on my own. So that's kind of where it started.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, so this leads me to my next question. Leadership is something that comes up in daily conversations and something that many are seeking and striving for. You have earned the respect of and as an expert, not only as in customer loyalty, but also the customer experience. So what would you say are the key factors to being a great leader in your field of expertise? And would this be what you would say is a differentiating factor in your leadership style?
Yeah, in everything I do with customers, employees, and vendors, I focus less on the transaction as being the point of my relationship and leadership style. To me, I want transformational relationships. Of course, transactions are needed to keep the lights on,
Yes.
but when relationships are really what keep the business vibrant, that's when customers come back because it's such a great experience. In fact, to that end, I always tell my employees, their number one job is to deliver a great experience. Of course, I want them to give, beautifully executed deliverables,
Yes.
but their number one job is to create a great experience, helping the customer feel understood and that their voice was heard and that they're providing their excellence and experience to bear on that solution. I've always found that when you have a strong relationship, and if the deliverables on point, the rewards, the transactions inevitably follow.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And also then it's rewarding for your staff and the people as well, because they're also giving, great customer service. So it also makes them feel good as a team, I suppose. That's also a contributing factor.
Yeah.
So do you feel your leadership skill or skills have had to be adapted over your entrepreneurial career? And what do you believe is the most effective in our current entrepreneurial landscape?
Yeah, for sure. I think that if our leadership styles aren't evolving and improving over time, I think we're stuck. And I think back on when I first started my first business, 23 years ago, the mindset was quite a bit different. Today, people are exposed to more ideas than ever before. They're more divergent and convergent than ever before. So with this sort of polarization of ideologies and philosophies, there's just different crowd that are working for us. So you have to kind of look at that dynamic as you lead. So for me, one of the most important leadership skills is developing within my teams an informed autonomy I want them to be completely, empowered to make decisions within a certain constraint.
Yes.
And if they make mistakes, I tell them all the time, I've got your back. You have, permission to make educated risks. And then also authentic relationships to me are key drivers in my leadership style. So I think more so now than ever, people want to know they're trusted and they're valued.
Yes.
And, at the end of the day, if I can't trust the people I've hired, I've had no business hiring them in the first place.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the next question of having worked in corporate, what would you say some of the best lessons and learnings you have gained from the experience, and what do you know or feel you do better or have adapted being a serial entrepreneur?
Great question. I think for me, the biggest lessons with enterprise organizations are lessons in error.
Yes.
The larger the institution, understandably so, they have larger systems and bureaucracies and fiefdoms and all kinds of things. And so with my organizations, I always try to have our teams think big but act small. And that doesn't mean making small-minded decisions, but
Yes.
making, quick steps to prove out an idea and then take it forward, if it works, or set it aside if it doesn't. And so taking educated risks, being nimble and quick is really a vital aspect in the organizations I try to lead, to make sure that we never get caught up in big, hairy processes that just slow us down.
Okay, no, I mean that's great. So, having launched a Kickstarter campaign, you clearly have a passion for startups, which is something I'm passionate about. So I can definitely relate. My question is around women and funding for female startups. Last year, less than 5% of female founders were funded globally, which is ludicrous. Why do you think this is still happening? And what as a man do you feel you could do to assist women in accessing more funds and to fund more female founders and startups?
Okay, great question. I don't know why we haven't seen a faster rate of female founders building businesses and such, and not getting the support that they deserve. It's funny you asked the question, because when I think of my wife, who spent the last 18 years of our married life, raising our family. I had a son with a terminal illness, and she gave everything she had to help our family. And now she stepped into the workspace in the last year and a half, and I have done everything I can to just pave the way for her to thrive and flourish. And it's been really rewarding to see her as a growing professional now step into that space. And I'm a huge fan of women in the workplace. In fact, I'm currently mentoring a woman who has an organizational kind of consultancy for the last 10 years, and she wants to step off that stage into a larger stage. And so I'm helping her shape, her business into something more scalable, helping her develop curriculum. And I'm just doing this as a mentor because I really believe in her vision, and doing everything I can to help her succeed. And I think, women in the workplace tend to have skills and attributes that often go underappreciated. Their perspectives, your perspectives, insight, can take an idea from good to great. And I hope I don't just use my words, but my actions will show that I'm a real fan of women in the workplace. I respect you all greatly, and really do my best to help support anyone I meet that wants to take the next step.
Yeah, because I can relate to that as well, because I've been also, I went to Silicon Valley in 2017 looking for funding. And one of the things, that I experienced besides sexual harassment was, how VC funds and investor funds, especially that are male dominated, are very patronizing towards women. So I just really am trying to understand why these VC firms still haven't changed in a time where we, women are, we still have to kind of fight for our place, but in certain instances, but it's a big challenge. So.
Yeah, and I think that, those male-dominated organizations that don't give proper consideration for women in the workplace, I think their days are numbered. I think that it'll be a matter of time before the tables turn and they'll be the minority.
Absolutely. So that brings me to your Kickstarter project, Spark, the magic of storytelling. Can you tell us a little more about the project? About the project as an interactive game?
Yeah, it's a really awesome game. It started when my kids were little. I would turn on soundtracks at bedtime, and I'd play them in the background, like movie scores, and I would just make up stories based on the mood and tone of the music.
Mm.
And when I did that, I was like, I unzipped the ceiling, and the walls would fall to the earth, and we would be transported across the universe or anywhere
Wow.
imagination would take us. It was really neat. I then do it, in the living room, in cars, driving long distances with my kids, camping, whatever. I even tried it with my employees. In fact, I had a gentleman that was running one of my training companies a
Mm.
couple of years ago. 56-year-old professional. He's more left brain than right brain. And he when I turned on the music while we were driving quite a distance to see a client, I said, Mark, it's your turn to tell a story. And he
Mm.
says, oh, I can't tell stories. And I said, yes, you can. And you know what? He told stories. And he goes, I had
Wow.
no idea that was in me. So music really has this beautiful capacity to take our inhibitions away, because music paints, images and feelings inside of us as we begin to share ideas. And it's just a beautiful thing. So the game really has spark cards, or story prompt cards, and
Wow.
music, and the combination of those story prompts and music really just creates amazing experiences. And I'll say one more thing about it.
Sure.
You know, everybody tells stories. And I think one of the most powerful stories we'll tell ourselves is that we can't tell stories, and
Yes.
that's the story we tell ourselves. But when we were little, our parents would all give us toys, and we would play with them. And what would we do with those? We would
Mm.
create stories, whether it was a doll or a GI Joe or a monster truck, whatever.
Yeah.
We'd create stories in our minds. And so as we grew up, we just forgot the art of storytelling.
Yeah.
And
And dreaming, right?
totally,
Yeah.
which is, I know, we need more of that. We need that in business. We need that in life.
Yeah.
Because I think we can be a lot more ambidextrous in our problem solving
Yeah.
if we can tap back into that, that part of us that believed in the possibilities when we were younger.
Absolutely. So, how has having all three skills in business, tech, and creative helped you to build such a strong and successful business? And has this helped you become more adaptable in the current entrepreneurial landscape and market?
Great question. So I tend to cross hemispheres a lot. I'm a strong right brain person. I can be a strong left brain person, and I really thrive in the intersection of those two.
Wow.
And so, I think in terms of, the combination of those skills, the right and left brain are powerful as tools.
Yeah.
One of the things we can do to become more adaptable and even competitive in the marketplace is learn to become polymaths. And polymath is a fancy word for somebody that's got a broad range of skills, and not
Yeah.
just superficial range, but they've got reasonable depth in a variety of capacities. And with the advent of automation, we hear about that all the time,
Yes.
but we don't know what that means yet, some of
No.
us. And so, but look at Facebook, for example. How often do they present us a video that their algorithms created
Yes.
just by virtue of photographs, and then their algorithms look at the music and the tempo, and this stuff is being made, almost totally professionally. And I
Mm.
mean, we're in the Atari age of automation. Way back in the 80s when Atari was, little blocks, and graphics were super simple
Mm.
and silly. I think we're just in the beginning stage of automation, and it's going to displace a lot of jobs. And so one of the lies I think we were taught as we were younger, earlier, in the 70s and 80s, we always heard the phrase, don't be a jack of all trades and master of none.
Yeah.
But and the inclination there was go deep in one thing, and
Mm.
there's certainly virtue there to become a master in a particular domain. But if you can be a master of a few domains, you start to do what Jobs did, or Da Vinci did, or
Yes.
the greatest thought leaders in the world were able to create solutions nobody else could see,
Yeah.
because they had the experience to allow them to see cross sections or intersections of disciplines, and how they could create a new solution. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. And also, it's going to force people that were once did those jobs into other positions to build their skill set, right?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that's one of my jobs as a business owner, is to just really help develop depth and breadth within my employees, because then they can start solving problems that those that are just myopically focused on one channel of thinking, they'll never see the solution.
No.
Um, anyway, yeah.
So you and your wife live in Salt Lake City. You're the father of 4 children. I understand your son, Mitchell Jones, passed away sadly from heart failure due to muscular dystrophy. And I'm really sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Having gone through this experience, I see you have a passion for philanthropy. Can you share with us the lessons and learnings, and how has this helped you take such a heart-wrenching experience and made you better as a family? And has this influenced you in business and in all aspects of your life and your overall perspective?
A great question. Yeah, losing my son was the most difficult experience of my life, period.
Yeah.
And and since then, having to decompress and take up all those broken pieces of what remained in terms of my life with my son, I've learned to take all those broken pieces and almost create a new mosaic of me.
Yes.
I have a blog called Mitchell's Journey. You just Google it, you'll see it first show up.
Yes.
And in there I write a lot of essays and create videos occasionally, but mostly they're long form essays that examine an aspect of suffering or meaning or purpose. And in that was my therapy. I didn't go to
Yes.
see a therapist. I would just write it out and think through it and try to ascribe meaning and purpose to my own experiences.
Yeah.
And what I found is there's this universal thread that everybody's trying to find meaning and purpose in their life, particularly in areas that are out of their control. Like,
For
hey, this
sure.
hard thing happened to me. What am I to make of this?
Yeah.
And so, I think that in connecting with my audience and my readers and learning about their suffering and realizing we're all so very similar, I
Yes.
think it's caused me to be a deeper empath with people, both professionally and personally.
For sure. So that will lead me to the next question, still relating to what we were talking about. Can you share a little more on how you keep the legacy and memory of your son alive, and how this has impacted others?
Yeah, again, related to that, this Mitchell's Journey blog that I've got, I also have a little nonprofit organization that tries to help families that are their needs sort of slip between the service gaps, and so I try to help them with wheelchair ramps or
Okay.
bathroom modifications. But that aside, continuing to write stories that of my son and our experiences with that,
Yeah.
keeps the memory of my son alive. But I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
I do, because we're all going to disappear into the sands of time, right?
Yes.
But
For
what I
sure.
care about is that somebody, whether it's my son Mitchell or a little girl named, Jennifer, whatever, how has that story impacted them to
Yeah.
interpret their life better and to make a better life out of that? And so I'm more interested in impact than people remembering my boy particularly, if you know what I
Yes.
mean.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump onto technology. So having the use of technology and social media, how has this helped you? And what would you say some of the positives and negatives personally for you? And how do you use this to the best of your advantage without it completely dictating your life?
Wow. Yeah.
Because it's a big problem these days, and it's a struggle for a lot of people.
Social distractions are, the social platforms and its intended distractions are probably the black plague of this generation. And I don't mean to sound dramatic,
Yeah.
but what it does is, and I'm currently observing what's going on even in our school district with students of dealing with either suicidality or
Yeah.
or depression.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out a correlation between that, because there seems to be some causal relationship, but I think it's hard for people to point it out definitively. So I think mindfulness is the number one key factor to
Yeah.
to not letting it dictate your life, to be able to say, you know what, I'll do this for 10 minutes, and I'm going to put it down.
Yeah.
And I think that mindfulness translates not only in terms of how we consume social media, but how we interact with those that are closest to us, whether it's the work associates or even family members. It's not just whether I have the phone right in front of my eyeballs, it's whether I'm actually engaged in the conversation. And I think we often, we've lost the art of mindfulness, if that makes sense. And so that's how I deal with it, is I just try to be mindful at all times. It's not easy, but it gets easier over time.
For sure. So the next question is, from your experience in raising funds for business, what and where do you say the biggest challenges and resistance resides? And as someone who is exceptional in problem solving, did you overcome this as an entrepreneur, and what would your key pieces of advice be to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, wow, what a great question. I'm convinced, well, if ever you can avoid getting money from people, the better off you are. And really, I mean, they talk about bootstrapping, people extol the virtues of that all the time, and it's hard. But if you can prove out an idea, even on a microcosmic level, and say, look, I was able to monetize this idea with just a little bit, and look, now imagine if I had funds to take it further and faster. It's a little bit easier to raise money that way, rather than saying, hey, I've got this, vaporware software I've envisioned, and I don't have any proof of concept or even, market indicators saying people would buy it. But I think that who you get your money from is as important as getting the money itself. Because if you get dumb money, if you get people that are either stuck in 1980, and I just saw a massive disaster with a really beautiful software company, that, the board was so enamored with their old philosophy of paper-based solutions, and just, they never understood what was actually being created, and it created a great deal of conflict. So who you get your money from is really important. You want them to be able to lean in and help you, not just finance stuff, but give you strategy and ideas and truly be a partner. I think that's the best way to get the money. And I would avoid anything else. And again, just prove the concept, and not just functionally, but financially. So wherever possible, de-risk it, and show your potential investor that customers are willing and have already paid for it. And it'll make things a lot faster and easier for you.
Okay, perfect. You still there?
Yeah.
The second last question is, what have some of your biggest career highlights been as an entrepreneur that were the most memorable for you?
Well, I certainly have always loved watching products that we create become globally successful for our customers, and just watching, our workmanship have a direct impact on organizations. But I think to me, my highlights have to do with people. And it's watching, my employees and associates grow and develop and become mature professionals. And, to me, I love watching that. I'm always trying to build my replacement where and whenever possible. And so to me, those are the things I love the most.
Perfect. And then the last question that I have for you is, who has been your biggest role model or mentor in business, and why?
Another great question. I wish I would have had mentors. I hear people talk about it all the time. I've really not ever had one that has really been a mentor. And so in a way, I think I'm still figuring out what to do for the people I'm trying to mentor. I want to step into the space and be the kind of mindful mentor that I wished I had. And so that's, but when I look at role models, there's so many out there, both in and out of the business space, whether it's, I've spoken before on other podcasts. I really do like Elon Musk's philosophy that, failure is going to be inevitable, embrace it, learn from it, and move on and get quick. But, I also love, the polymaths of throughout the history of time. How did Da Vinci come up with the solutions he came up with, and his inventions. And, you know, there's a lot of role models in and out of business that I think really guide me. And I'm always just trying to be a student of history. What
Yes,
can I learn from others?
for sure. And just one more point, sorry, is what would be your 3 key pieces of advice for entrepreneurs, those who are in it or going through it or are potentially wanting to start up their own business?
The 3 tips I would give entrepreneurs that are just stepping into their space. Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes. Number one, you've got to be passionate about what you're doing. You really have to love what you're doing, because it's going to be hard as hell. It's going to be
Yes.
tough. And, you know, you're going to fall on your face and swallow your teeth a couple times, and you got to learn to get back up. But so that's why it's so important to love what you're doing, because you won't give up. But also, I think another thing is be willing to let go. Like Stephen King says of writing, kill your darlings. But what he means by that is the things you love the most, be willing, like those are dangerous. Those can create blind spots. And so if
Mm.
you're really passionate about something, find some peers that will give you honest reflection, so
Yes.
that they'll be able to tell you, you know, I can see you're passionate, but this doesn't make any sense. Because
Yes.
we've got to have friends tell us the truth and
Yes.
have the wisdom to do so. That would be number 2. And then, you know, number 3, I think surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. The room,
Always.
the room is always smarter than you. And so, you know, if you get a collective of people that are smarter and that can provide value, don't be intimidated by that. Help them flourish and let them shine, because when they win, you win.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. That was really insightful. And yeah, it was, thank you for sharing your journey.
You bet. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.